and very soon. So this week's Parshat is filled with great opportunities, great stories. And the first one I think we should do is one of the brachot. And I think this one, I like this one a lot because it has a very important lesson about how we raise our children, even though he doesn't directly talk about it. But to me, I believe this one is a really amazing one about teaching us a lesson about how we should raise our kids and also how we should speak to people in general. Amen. So the Torah Dala, the fourth Torah of Zera Shimshon. So in the pasuk Kav Gimel, Perek Kav Gimel, pasuk Chet, it says, Ma'akov lo kabo el uma izom lo za'am Adonai. So it says, how can I curse? God is not cursed. How can I anger? Hashem is not angry. That's in the beginning of Bilam's set of curses, blessings, whatever you want to call it. Depending on who we're asked, most likely it's going to be brachot. He tried to curse, and the Zera Shimshon says it starts like this: Ma'akov lo kava el. So,
which Torah is this again, please?
This is Torah Dalid. Torah Dalid.
Zera Shimshon, Mordecai Holtz.
Zera Shimshon.
Live.
We're live from Efrat. Okay, do you not hear it?
Yeah, it's all good.
Okay,
YouTube,
good.
Instagram.
Okay, great.
Audio.
We're good to go. So, Torah Dalid, the fourth Torah. So he says, Ma'akov, how can I curse if this? How can I curse? God is not cursed. And how can I anger? Hashem never gets angry, right? So we can't curse that which Hashem has not cursed. So therefore, Bilam is basically saying that I'm not going to be really successful in what I'm doing. So the first thing the Zera Shimshon says is Pirush Rashi, Shehayu ru'uyin litkalkel lo litkalalu. Right? So Rashi says, if we look at Rashi there, which is an interesting, he starts off, he says is, Shehayu ru'uyin litkalel lo litkalalu. When they were ready, when they were worthy, quote unquote, of being cursed, they didn't get cursed. Sherizkir avihem et avonam ki ba'apam hargu ish. Lo kalal elab apam, shenemar aru apam. So he says, the Rashi starts off. He says is that when they were supposed to be cursed, when Bnei Israel were supposed to be cursed, they didn't get cursed. And when he says when their forefather, that is Yaakov, gives the brachot to their children, to his children, he says he mentions their what their flaw was, their sin was. Ki ba'apam hargu ish. Right, in their anger, they killed someone. That's when Yaakov tells the brachot of Shimon, gives the brachot to Shimon Levi. He says that in their anger they killed someone. Lo kalal el apam. He didn't curse them themselves. He didn't curse Shimon Levi. So who did he curse? He cursed their anger, right? Shenemar aru apam. That's what it says in the pasuk of the brachot there in Parshat Vayechi. Nichnas avihem b'mirma, and then when he says when their forefather, that is the father, that is. When their forefather went in trickery, that is Yitzchak, right? Eitzel Aviv, Hayaru Ilit Kalel. When Yaakov went into Yitzchak, right, he should have gotten cursed also. Why? Because Yitzchak realized what just happened, and Yitzchak should have done what? Should have cursed him, right? He thought he was Esau, right? So he thought he should have been cursed him. Manei Marsham Gam Baruch He said also you too should be blessed. So he says you too should be blessed, and therefore what? Therefore he got the bracha. So the question, what's the first question? So he says here, so we go back to Zera Shimshon, he says, Kir Avihem, right? He says the first part is he mentions Yaakov, and the next part of Rashi he says is, actually, Kir Avihem et avonam ba'apam hargu ish lo kilel el apam, shneimar aru apam kiyaz, kshenichnas avihem b'mirma itzel aviv, ha'aru litkalel, v'nan neimar sham gam baruch yeh. So the kashe, he says, kashe, hey maaseh hava bereisha. Right? He says what should have happened? We should have had first the story of Yitzchak, right? Rashi should have first, the Zera Shimshon is asking a question on Yitzchak. He says Yitzchak should have been the first story that Rashi brings and not Yaakov's story, right? In the order, chronological order, it should have been, he should have brought the first the Yitzchak story and then the Yaakov story. But in Rashi, he brings the Yaakov story first and then he brings the Yitzchak story. So Zera Shimshon is kashe. Hai maaseh hava bereisha, v'halo maaseh Yaakov hava bereisha. Lama mapech Rashi b'lefarish al shvatim kodem sheiparish al Yaakov. I mean, so he says, why did Rashi flip this order? Right? He should have first given the question about Yaakov and Yitzchak, meaning the story of the brachot that were given quote unquote in trickery, and then he should have mentioned, what should he have mentioned next? He should have mentioned the story of the shvatim afterwards. But for some reason, obviously, there's a reason behind why Rashi chose the order in which he chose it. Right? We know that Rashi had an amazing understanding of Torah. So there's obviously he had there was no question that he did it for a reason. So that's the biggest question that's what the Zera Shimshon on this question on Rashi. It starts with on Rashi, and how he gets to and the main question that he really has here is the order, and the second question that he really asks is that the whole time that Rashi is asking this question is he's asking really is that when Yaakov gave the brachot to Shimon Levi, he says it's ki ba'apam. He curses their anger. He doesn't curse them. And I mentioned to Eli before, is that it's an important value. We're going to get to why that. I think that's an important value later down the line. Why it's an important value how we approach and teach our kids and educate our kids in general as well. ויש לומר שממעשה יעקב לא יש להוכיח כל כך, אבל לאחר שהביא מעשה שמעון ולוי, אז יש הוכחה גמורה. So he says is that the story of Yaakov, the trickery of Yaakov, it wasn't enough to prove what he's trying to do. That's what his answer is so far. אבל לאחר שהביא מעשה שמעון ולוי, אז יש הוכחה גמורה אף מיעקב. He says once you bring the story of Shimon Levi, then we have enough of a proof. So now that we have to understand what is that story? What are the stories? What are we trying to get to? What are we trying to get to? והיינו שיעקב לקח הברכות במרמה, ויצחק כשנתנו הברכות לא היה פיו וליבו שווים. So he says is that when Yaakov took the brachot from in trickery, when he took the brachot, he was right. Yitzchak כשנתנו הברכות לא היה פיו וליבו שווים. Right. So what happened let's go over the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov, that whole story. If when we go there, we understand that when Yitzchak was giving that bracha to who he thought it was Esav, right? This whole time he said Akol Kol Yaakov Adam Yedei Esav, but his intention was to give it to the Esav, right? His head was saying his mouth was saying give the bracha to Esav, and his brain was give it to right. His kavanah was one way. His kavanah and his mouth were two different things, right? In other words, his brain and his mind and his mouth were not equal. Okay, he wasn't necessarily. They weren't on in parallel, right? In other words, he was thinking to give them to Esav, the person standing in front of him. He thought they were Esav, and then he found out afterwards that they're going to be Yitzchak. It was actually Yaakov. So he says, "Gam baruch yeh." Okay, he too gets a bracha. Right? Right? In his heart, he was meant. In his heart, he was meant to give a bracha to Esav, and then in his mouth, he was actually giving a bracha to Yaakov. So he says, therefore we can understand that when Yitzchak felt that Yaakov was being tricked, he said that he didn't feel that at the time, Yitzchak didn't feel that he was worthy of cursing him, because he said at the end of the day he realized that he was being tricked himself. We're looking for another English. There's another English one, I think, another set of English over there, if I'm not mistaken. Hold on one second.
There's a whole thing on the second show. Book 9.
Oh, here. Book what?
9.
This is 8, 7, 6.
Sorry.
It's all good. Okay, so. Unless he took it with him. Okay, so he says, so v'sharei sof sof v'natanu brachot b'fiv v'afshar shemishum hachi chazar v'kiyamam gam baruch yeh v'alachar shemaaseh Shimon v'levi muchach shapir. So he says is that in other words, when Yitzchak was giving the brachot to Yaakov, he originally intended that those brachot were going to be going to Esav, and then he realized that what happened is he realized that the brachot he realized the trickery that was going on, and so therefore he said, Gam Baruch Yeh, he should too to be blessed. But with the Shimon v'Levi, it was clear, and therefore that only afterwards we can prove then we could say that it was a better proof of Shimon v'Levi. I don't know where the other set is. Okay, so this is an empower. So basically, what we're going to go over again is that we have the Torah Dalet starts with one of the blessings that Bilam gives, and he says, "How can I curse that which is not cursed?" And Rashi there, right on that spot, Rashi says that he brings two proofs. He says that which is worthy to curse, you can curse, but that which is not worthy, I can't curse, right? So Rashi brings a question there, and he says, When he mentions Rashi first brings the story of Shimon and Levi, and he says at the time Yaakov was angry at them, and he curses their anger. He doesn't curse them, right? Anger. They were angry, so that and you're going to understand in a second what I mean. And then that was it. He curses their anger. It says in the brachot of Shimon and Levi in Parshat Vayechi, it says Ki ba'apam hargu ish. In their anger, they killed someone. And he's talking about Shechem, obviously, Shechem and Hamor, and the whole city of Shechem. And then Rashi brings a second proof. The second proof is the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov with the brachot that were, how Yaakov tricked Yitzchak to be Esav. So the question that the Zera Shimshon is asking is, how could it be that Rashi didn't give the stories in the order that they happened? Meaning, first you give the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav, and then you give the story of Yaakov and his children. Why did Rashi go out of his way to switch the order, give the story of Yaakov and his children first, and then give the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov? So the answer, the first part he says is that there was not enough proof. The Zera Shimshon says there wasn't enough proof with the story. The story of Yitzchak and Yaakov, and Esav, but there wasn't enough proof for really what we're trying to prove, and therefore Rashi had to switch the order. We're going to get to what does that mean in a second. So now there's a beautiful piece here that the Zera Shimshon now goes into something that the Arizal mentions. Now I don't understand everything that Arizal says. I don't think any of us do. But it's a beautiful piece, and it really explains something about this whole story, and as to why Yaakov really got upset at his sons. It says here, "Shekatuva Ari Azal," and he says here, "Sheterach ba al ishto nida, v'utzrachu shnehem litgalgel la'asir mehem zuamazu." So he says Terach, that who's Terach, Avram's father. So he said Terach, had relations with his wife when she was a nida. And therefore, how does he get to that? I don't know. Again, like I said, I don't understand all of that the Ari HaKadosh says, but I can say that this is what he said. And he says here, they had to do some sort of tikkun for that mistake. Terach had to do some sort of mistake. So they had to come back in some sort of gilgul sheni.
It was Avram's father.
It was Avram's father. You're going to get to it. It's crazy, right? Hold on a second. We're going to get to it.
Idol worship.
Yeah. Right. So that's exactly what I was asking the same question when I was reading it, but you'll see that it goes into something beautiful here. So it says here, Uba Terach bil-gilgul bi-Iyov. Terach, and it's not the first time that Ari mentions, he mentions many times that Terach was a gilgul of, Iyov was a gilgul of Terach. And he says, if you look at all the pain and suffering that Iyov went through, we can understand how much pain and suffering he did for that one sin that Terach did, although there were many sins that he did. The amount of suffering that Iyov had, it's not stam that he had to go through a tough gilgul. And then he says, Ishto bidina. His wife, that is Terach's wife, who they had relations when she was in Ida, so he says she was Dinah. Terach's wife was Dinah. That means Avram's mother was Dinah. I mean, a gilgul of Avram's mother was Dinah. So he says here, Sheniset achar kach le'Iyov.
Situation.
Yeah. Okay. So he says here. So he says that Ishto b'Dina. So that means his wife. That is Avram's mother was a gilgul. Dinah was Avram's mother in a gilgul. And he says she nisat achar kach le'Iyov. She married later on Iyov. I'm not even sure what that means. How she married Iyov, because Dinah obviously lived much before that. V'siman davar nida ne'epcha le'Dina. Dina is the same word as nida. So it's beautiful. It's a beautiful. Just that alone is just like amazing, like a little insight. You never thought about it. You see the word Dina all the time. So the Ari HaKadosh says that the Dina is the reverse words. If you mix up the letters, it's the word of Nida, meaning that she was a gilgul of Avram's mother in Dina. It says here, Uviyov ayadei Yisurim husra mimenu zotan zuama. So he says here that that Iyov, through his Yisurim, he was able to extract the Zuamad, meaning all the mistakes that he went through, all the trials and tribulations that he went through. I can give you one here. Yeah? Okay. So all the trials, all the Yisurim that he went through, we're doing Torah Dalet. So the question, I'm going to go back. I'll start again just to go summarize quickly so that we don't.
Yes, review is the best.
Okay, so the review is the best. So it says here, the review is. Exactly. So the question is, we start with the pasuk from this week's Parshat in Bilam. So Bilam says, Ma'ekov lo kaba'el, u'ma'ezom lo za'am Adonai. So he says here, how am I going to curse? How am I going to curse that which is not being able to curse? So Rashi Ala Makom says, it says here, "Kshayu ru'in nitkalel, lo nitkalulu." When they were meant to get cursed, they couldn't get cursed, right? When they were able to get cursed, they couldn't get cursed, and when they so the Rashi there on the spot says he brings two proofs. He brings two proofs. One proof is he brings the proof of Yaakov when he gives the brachot to his sons, Shimon and Levi, right? So what does he bring? What is the story there? He brings the story when they gives out the brachot in Parshat Vayechi. He says that ki ba'apam hargu ish, that when they got angry.
That's the curse.
The curse. That's the curse. But
anger is the curse.
Anger is the curse. But he didn't curse the Shimon Levi. He curses their anger.
Nice.
Right? That's what Rashi says. And then Rashi brings a second proof, and he says the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav. So the question that the Zera Shimshon has is, why would you flip the order? Why would you switch the order? The order happened first. Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Esav happened, and then the story of Yaakov and his sons. So there's got to be a reason why Rashi went out of his way to change the order.
Okay.
So the Zera Shimshon gives a suggestion. He's saying is that the story of Shimon and Levi was a better proof about what was going on, a better proof of what really happened. That is that when Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav happened, it wasn't a good story. It wasn't as good of a proof as the story of Shimon and Levi. Why? Because the story of Yaakov and of Shimon and Levi, of Yitzchak, Yaakov and Esav, what happens? Yaakov gets dressed up as Esav, and Yitzchak thinks Esav is standing in front of him. So he's saying, give the bracha to. He's saying one thing, and in his mind he's thinking it's Esav, right? He's saying the bracha, he's giving it to Yaakov, but he's in his heart he's thinking it's Esav, right? So his mind and his heart, his brain and his mouth are not saying the same thing, right? But what happens? How do we know that it's? What happens? And once he finds out that we got tricked, what does he say? Gam baruch yeh. He too shall be blessed. So in other words, he doesn't undo he doesn't really undo the whole bracha. But the story with Yaakov and the Shvatim, Yaakov and Shimon and Levi, there he gets angry. Like he really gets angry. He gives it to him. But he never, like I said before, the bracha that he gives them, or what he says there, is really a lesson for all of us in raising children.
I find it very surprising that bracha worked all together, because we learn many times. For example, if you want to avoid ayinara, so you keep in mind that your car. Right. It's not really your car. Hashem gave it to you, so you transfer it, but it's not yours.
Right.
It's Hashem's.
Right.
Oh, it's because it's Hashem's. So I'm jealous of your car. Meanwhile, you don't have a car.
Right. So
here he gives bracha to Yaakov, thinking it's Esav. Shouldn't work. Should be like.
So that's exactly what he's saying. It's exactly what he's saying. He's saying is that what he had in his mind is that it's supposed to be Esav. Yeah. Right, and then what happens? He finds out afterwards that's Yaakov.
There's no retraction. It's like, okay,
right, exactly.
He's okay with it.
Right, exactly. It's like, all right, I'm not.
Should be
right, you should be also right. There's no oops. Right, it doesn't say oops. Right, and then with the bracha the bracha that he gives Shimon and Levi, what you even notice later on, it's not really a bracha. Let's just be honest. It's not a bracha. And I learned that later on. We're going to get to later. He doesn't really mention it, but I look later on in the brachot that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he gives a bracha at the end, doesn't give Shimon, because he's still talking about the same situation. We're going to get to it in a second. Wild. But anyways, so you came in right when part of Ariya Kadosh. Ariya Kadosh mentions that Terach, that is Avram's father, and his wife, that is Avram's mother, had relations when she was a Nidah. Okay. Now again, like I said before, I don't understand all of that, which is Ariya Kadosh says. I don't think I understand anything. But right, where'd you get that?
They
right.
weren't even Jewish.
Right. So he says, and therefore they both had to do some sort of gilgul later on. They had to repent for their sins. Okay. So he says Terach was a gilgul of Eov was a gilgul of Terach.
Whoa.
And he says that his mother
married Eov.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened either. Exactly.
It's not the same time.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Eov lived for many, many years.
Right, Eov also lived in the time of Paro, right? It's of Paro.
Paro lived for many years.
Right. So it's right. Anyway, so you have this thing where Dina. How does Ariya Kadosh prove it? He says Dina is a lashon nida. Nida and Dina, right?
I think that's the proof.
Well, it's not the proof, but he says that's the hint, the remez. Anyways, so he says Yov al Yedei Yisrim who sra mimenu zomazot. So he says that Yov, through all the trials and tribulations he went through, that is the tikkun that he did. He had to go through those crazy tribulations. V'dina be'ota bi'ah sheba aleh Shechem ben Chamor sha'av mimenu kol ha'za'ava v'nitara. He says that Dina, with that moment, what happened with Shechem, when Shechem, did what he did, right? He took out of her the zuama that was mistaken.
Weird. How does that get out?
I don't know. Again, there's certain things I don't argue with, but that's one of them. I don't argue with.
The tsar that she had.
Yeah, the tsar she had. So now, what's even crazier is about to say. Well, this is what he says. Va'alzen emar batihini data alav. So he says, as you would think, right? You would think that, and then in Vayikra, it says, when we learn all the Holtz Nida in Sefer Vayikra, it says is that in other words, it's like when the korbanot, right? What does the korban do? Korban is a kind of, I don't want to say transfers because that makes it sound very hocus pocusy, but basically you take the korban, and instead of me sacrificing myself, I give it over to the korban. And the korban is my tefillot and my chet kind of gets moved to the animal. And then I do tshuva, and instead of me dying, the animal dies, right? So the animal gets kind of given up to Hashem, and that's okay. So he says here that we would all think, right? What happens? We all think of the story of Dinah. We're like, wait a minute, no one would let that go, right? We think that Shimon and Levi did something. We're like, okay, that's an honor killing, right?
No, they killed the whole city.
Right, okay, so hold on a second. So he's going to get to it in a second, right? So they go out, guns blazing, they're ready to go, right? They go out and they're ready to go. So he says here, no. The Zera Shimshon says, no, absolutely not. She was through this, she was actually nitara, not nitma'ah, right? We all think it's nitma'ah. He says, no, he doesn't say it himself. He's saying, based on the Ariyah Kadosh, he's saying that that she was actually become nitara. She was actually purified from this. Basically, she was a gilgul of Avram's mother, and through this act that happened with Shechem, she was a nitara.
He says, but Tehini the ta'alav, that it jumps onto him.
Right, exactly. V'zehu v'Yaakov shama ki timat bito. Okay, so it says here.
I'm sorry. It's difficult.
Yeah, of course.
It's difficult because Dina was Dina also. Like, okay, she was a gilgul of but she was also just Dina, a young girl who was the daughter of Yaakov.
Right.
What did she ever do in her life to deserve something?
Okay, so that's exactly
we all learned that the suffering of the tzaddikim in this world is to remove the yisurim. It's like they go through it in this world,
right,
to purify them for the next.
Right.
But Dina's a gilgul of somebody who. It's very challenging.
It's very challenging. I don't disagree with you. It's definitely not something that.
Why don't you have the answers?
I don't have the answers.
If Charles was here,
yeah,
he would have the answers.
Well,
Eddie maybe knows.
He's here on YouTube.
Okay, so Charles is here, so maybe he has the answer. Maybe
He wrote, it was a chicken.
It was a ticker, right? It was a ticker. Okay.
Why don't we see him online? Put him online. Want to see him?
Yeah, we'll get to it.
Work.
He's working. Yeah. So
In
anyway.
Schwitz,
Anyway, so it was a tikkun. She was a tikkun for Abraham's mother. So now we have this crazy story. We have this crazy situation where Dina is a tikkun of Avram's mother. So
he said Dina put herself outside, causing attention to her.
Right. Okay. So that could be the other. Okay. Fine.
It's almost like time travel, right? Dina travels back in time, so to speak.
Right.
To fix the mistakes.
And by the way, that happens with all of us. We just don't know who we are.
Right. I'm saying it's like, those stories where made up stories, obviously. The person goes back in time and then steps on some kind of a thing, comes back, the world is completely different.
Right. So anyway, so far we have a scenario that basically what Rashi says is we have the two stories, Yaakov and his sons, that is Yaakov and the Shvatim, and we have the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esau.
And how's this connected yet to Balak?
We're going to get there. When you get there.
Patience, guys. We're going to get there.
Patience. So it's a wild connection, but it's an amazing connection. I think it really teaches, like I said, that the reason why I loved it so much is such a beautiful lesson about how we approach raising our children. It's such a beautiful thing. Really, yeah, really. I'm going to tell you. At the end, you're just like, whoa. Okay, just remember what Yaakov did when he says the bracha. You have to just remember. He says is Shimon ve'achim, right? Klei Hamas mechorotehem, right? If we can even go to the bracha that he gives them. You're going to see, and then it says here. Hold on. The apam, it says here. Okay, it says here. Reuven bechori atak. Okay, and he says here. Shimon v'Levi achim klei Hamas mechorotehem. He says Shimon and Levi are comrades. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. B'sodam al tavon nafshi b'kalam ki ba'apam hargu ish. In their anger with their okay, he says here for their rage. I
guess I got some of that anger from them somehow.
Right. For the
tribe somehow.
For in their rage they murder people. Okay, so he mentions their rage, but he doesn't curse them.
People they
right?
anger, they stab, they kill.
Right, but again, they didn't. What happened?
Rage out.
Right. So what happened? So the whole point here. Right. So they get cursed. But what happens here? He curses not. He doesn't curse them.
Their actions.
He actions are actions. So now I'm going to get to that. We're going to get to late that. Just remember that. And remember the reason why this whole thing is the Zera Shimshon has a question as to why he switched the order. Okay, so we're going to get back to it in a second. So he says here, Yaakov Yaakov heard that this happened, right? So he said that Yaakov knew that this was supposed to. Yaakov knew that this whole idea that Dinah was a tikkun of Terach's, that is Terach's wife. He knew that was supposed to happen.
Well, Yaakov knew, but everybody else thought that she got
right. She was right. It wasn't appropriate, right?
Didn't know the secret.
If you look there at the story, Yaakov stepped silent. He didn't do anything. He didn't say anything until they came, until the sons came back. Right?
To show them she was a Gilgul of
right. He wanted to he held it all in until he tells his children, until he tells his sons.
So why did they kill him?
So that's what he's going to get to in a second. Right? It's obvious that the sons, that is the 12 tribes, they heard what's going on. They're walking around the streets. They know what's going on. They heard it. So why does Yaakov have to A, hold the secret in, and B, why does he have to go back and tell them again? They knew what was going on. Right? So why do we have to go back? So he says that Yaakov knew the secret. The secret is that this was, it doesn't sound like it, but he knew that this was meant to happen. Meaning, that doesn't sound right, but he knew that what Dinah's, the story with Dinah, he knew that was a tikkun for something. So he was upset, he was angry, but he held it in. And then he wanted to tell the sons, don't worry, it's a son, it was meant to happen. It's a sod. I want to tell you the sod, and that's what he says here. Okay, they're coming in, guns blazing. They're upset, right? You can imagine the story. Yaakov's just sitting there in his room, quiet.
Let it be.
And they're walking in. They're about to break down the house, right? And he's just sitting there like, "Whoa, guys, slow down. Let's take a deep breath. Put the guns away. And that's what he's doing. And they walk in and he says, how can
we don't care if it's a tikkun, we don't care about the soul.
I don't want to hear,
We're going by the Parshat.
Right.
You did this, Avera.
That's it.
We're cleaning up.
We see one thing. I don't care about the sod. Right? We don't care about the sod.
Oh, we care. We Mazel tov, but you did it, you're going to be punished.
Right, exactly.
Here and now.
Right, here and now. We're taking care of it, right? So it's what we see versus what we think, right? In other words, remember, go back to what Rashi said. What Zera Shimshon said in the second paragraph, he said is that his mind and his mouth were not the same. Right? There's a practical what's going on right now, and then we take a second to hold ourselves in and say, wait a minute, there must be a bigger reason for what we're doing, right? The opposite of what I once heard Rav Biederman say, Bieder say that there's, I forgot who he said, he quoted someone, he says, right? Right. But the Torah that he says is when we're in an angry moment, we only see tunnel vision. We only see something like this, right? But mates we're in a tough situation. We only see this, right? So I only see this, and I say it's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
Right? And then what happens? And it, right, right? I mean, like this tight little spot. I feel like, B'merchab, hold on, Hashem, let
You
me
move
see.
back.
Right, take a
take
step
a
back.
breath.
Right, let me
Take a breath. Look at the picture.
Right, the
Hashem's
bigger,
running the
right,
show. Come
exactly.
said it.
Right, then you say, Hashem, show me the bigger picture.
Well, yesterday I snapped. I was coming out of a parking lot somewhere in a calm area, not here in the front, in Jerusalem, and I was putting my baby from the Agalah into the car because we couldn't get her in the car seat. We had to pull out, and a car came, and we were there for like, I don't know, 30 seconds bothering him, like he beeped.
Yeah.
The guy like beeped at me. And like he sees me with like a little baby, like a half newborn.
Right.
Like beep. I told him beep. I snapped, but the steam started coming out of my ears. The guy told me, "Ta'avod al hamidot shelcha." He's like, "You're being tested here, buddy."
Right. So anyway,
Then the car behind him beeped.
Right.
So,
So
but you see, I'm here with a baby. Come on.
so it's a test for all of us. But anyway, so what you're seeing here is that Yaakov was holding back. He was holding back because he understood what was going on. And the sons, who are a range of ages, you can imagine that some of them are 18, 19, these kids with lots of energy are just like, Dad, this is not happening. We can't just be like this, right? So he was like, I want to tell you the secret. And they're saying, secret schmecret. I don't care about God, Pops, right? So he says here. Yet Yaakov came, when the boys came, Yaakov said to them, listen, I'm going to tell you a secret. This whole thing with Dinah, no one's saying it's a good thing, but maybe we have to look at what Hashem is like, the bigger picture, and there's a Gilgul, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Right? Right? Still, like you said, they snapped. They're like, we don't care. We're not doing it. I don't care. Right? They're going to say what they're thinking an honor killing. They're thinking, Dad, Abba, we can't just let this go. We're going to let this go. How are you going to let this go? They're saying is, Dad, we're 12 right here. Let's say we're 10 right here. They're actually at the time they were 10. There are 10 sons right here. Dad, we're 10 right here. We all know the sod. We got it. But what's going to happen?
Why were they 10?
Because Yosef and Binyamin were not necessarily there yet.
Why not?
I don't think Binyamin was definitely not born yet. But Yosef.
This is when he came after Esav.
No, this is about this Dinah.
It's after he left Esav.
Yeah, but
they say why did Dinah get punished? Because Yaakov didn't give her to.
Oh, right. It could be okay. But anyways, so they're
Joseph should be there with Binyamin.
Okay, so let's say they have. Okay, so even if the 12 sons are there, 12 tribes are there, right? So even so, we have a situation. They're saying, Dad, we're 12 boys here. We'll get we accept your soul. We accept your situation. You accept your explanation. But what's next generation going to say, or the 3 generations from now are going to say? So Shema, they're going to be like, we don't care about what you just said. That we don't understand that. So we got to do something about it. We got to show honor killing. We got to show something. We got to make a point.
Sounds reasonable.
Right?
That's
That's what it says here. Look, it says here. Klomar the dorot habaim shelo yedu hasod yomru kinivela asazeh Hashem. He defiled our sister. They're not going to listen to a sod. They're not going to want to even listen to it. Think about that sod. How are you going to do that? How are you going to accept that? We got to do something. We got to make a point. And Yaakov's telling them, stop, relax, take a deep breath. Right? Yaakov, by the way, it's not the first time that Yaakov, by the way, with Yaakov and Yosef, the story of Yosef, what happens when the brothers start beating up on Yosef, and Yaakov hears the story in the dream. What does he say? Yaakov, Vaviv Shamar Tadava. He holds back. He restrains himself because he says there's got to be a bigger picture.
No, he knew
he knows
the dreams were coming true.
Right, but he also
he
knew
was waiting. The Zohar says he was waiting to see when they're going to come.
But he also, it's just a matter. It's Yaakov's trait that he just he waits a little bit because he says, why do we say Titena met Yaakov? Because Yaakov understands that there's a bigger picture that we just don't understand. So he says to the boy, he's telling to his sons, just trust me on this. Trust me on the sod. The sod is going to happen. Is happening. Don't get angry. And the boys are saying, absolutely not. We got to do something because otherwise the next generation or 3 generations from now are going to be like, Dad. They're going to be like, how could you, right? How could that happen, right? In other words, what happens? The Nevelah but what we call honor killings, right? We call it like this honor of the family thing. That's not something that happens in those days. It didn't happen in those days.
Also, not such a Jewish thing.
But exactly, it's not a Jewish thing. That whole statement, that whole
It's like
framework,
the Arab mafia.
right?
thing. No?
Yeah, it is. The whole framework of honor killings or things that like that is not a Jewish thing, right? So this whole thing was that they were influenced.
But why do we need to, okay,
Right.
why do we need to qualify it as honor killing?
Because otherwise,
Somebody comes in, kills one of yours.
But he
or
didn't
does
kill her.
Something horrible.
yeah. So
So you go,
you know, but we don't. But the Jewish.
But if he was Jewish, you would have to marry her and never let her out.
right.
If he was Jewish, Shem and Chamor,
That's what Yaakov said to
you
them.
would have to marry
Yaakov
her and
said
never
that.
divorce her.
Yaakov said to them, "What are we going to do? How do we get around this? How do we get around it?" Yaakov said, "Okay, you love my sister, my daughter. Let's make you all Jewish, right?" And then right, that's what he thought he was going to do. But then what is so he comes to Shechem.
They actually were coming.
Right, they
did
were
the
ready.
bris.
They did the
They
bris.
did the bris.
Right, and then so Shechem, but of course the brothers couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle that. They couldn't handle that the guy who did what he did to Dinah, to their sister, is standing right in front of them saying, "Okay, we're ready to do a brit milah." They couldn't handle it. They snapped.
The
Okay.
question is, was Yaakov Avinu right? Were they supposed to marry in, and would there be peace with
I
Shem
don't
and
know. I
Chamor?
don't know. Okay. So
Good news,
that,
by the way, we can take the couples home.
oh yeah. Okay. Good. Okay.
We
So
got a thumbs up
you got a thumbs up. Oh,
from the boss.
on the boss. Okay.
Malcolm points out that Dina was still in prison. No, I mean,
Right.
they were still holding her.
So that's it. Look what it says here. It says here, "V'zeu b'Yisrael." Shelichora miutar. The whole word b'Yisrael. It says there, "Nevela asa b'Yisrael." We could have just said "Nevela asa." We didn't say b'Yisrael. We don't need the word b'Yisrael. Yisrael is extra, according to Zera Shimshon. Ela l'rmos ha'nevela ina lefi ha'emet ela le'inei habriot. The truth is not. It's not the emet. The real truth is not what's being seen. Right now, we don't. What happens a lot of times is we see what's in front of us, but we don't understand the truth until a couple of months, years. Hopefully, it's months, but sometimes it's a day, 2 days. Sometimes it's years later. We're like, oh, now I get it. You see the whole string of events. You're like, wait a minute. Now I see the whole what Hashem just did. And Yaakov was telling them, this is what happens. Sometimes we don't understand what's going on in front of us, but we have to understand. We have to accept what happens, and we don't have to be like charged with our anger and say use our anger first, right? Remember, this whole thing is about anger. What happened? So that's what he says here. So he says is even though they knew the sod, they knew the secret, right? They just still got angry. They still snapped. They knew the secret, and they knew that Dinah. What happened to Dinah was a tikkun for what Terach's wife. What happened with Terach's wife, right? So they knew it was a tikkun. They heard it. They got it. They said, "Okay, Dad, we got it." But we can imagine how many times we've heard things people say, "It will be okay." How many times have we heard that? It'll be okay. Right now, it's a tough situation. We always say that, but you're so angry. You're just like, I got to do something. I got to do something. I got to get angry, right? How many times have that happened to us, right? Every one of us has stories like that. And there's no shortage of time and examples. But the point is that sometimes you just have to say, like, wait a minute. There's Abraham Lincoln once wrote, I think it was in How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. He wrote in his story, he said Abraham Lincoln was known that if you looked at I think they opened his drawer once, like his desk drawer, and he had like hundreds of letters in there, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They said all these letters is what he wanted to say. Like he wrote these letters to people like how angry I am at you and whatever, but he didn't say them. He just wrote them. He said I had to do something with them, so I put them on paper. And then he put them in the drawer and he closed the drawer and he said, okay, that's it. But after he got killed, they're like, wow, this guy's like Harif, But that's the thing here. Yaakov is saying is, guys, you just have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And these guys are saying is, no way, no chance. We can't do it. We got to do something. Because if we don't do something, what are the world going to say about us? They're going to be like reading this story later on in life. They're going to be like, honor killing, this is the chance. Right?
When do
But
we
it's funny how
start?
he says, Agam shelo yaroi la'onech klal.
Right.
As if Shem and Chamor knew that he's doing a tikkun
Right,
for Terach's wife.
Right. So no.
Zera Shimshon saying, Lo yaroi la'onech klal.
Right.
He didn't know he was fixing, and he didn't know
Right.
that she was a Gilgul
Right.
of Terach. So
He fixed him. How did he fix it?
Tuma left her from
No,
Avera.
it's even more than that.
Wow.
Because he was willing to get married to her. right? So in some ways, the Zera Shimshon is yes.
He was gonna marry her.
Right, so he's married. So maybe listen, maybe it wasn't the right way to do it, but at least according to halacha, he got married, and then not only did he marry, he's like, I'm going to convince my whole tribe to get married, to get a breed. So maybe he didn't really deserve, quote unquote, right? So there's this whole, now we have this whole situation. Right? Maybe we could say is, now maybe we should look at it and say, maybe Shimon and Levi didn't really sin. Right? They did something. They were like, we got to do something. They took their anger, and they're like,
No, but
okay.
how can you say that? Because what reshut do they have to kill the whole city?
So that's what he's going to get to. It says is once Yaakov tells them the secret. Once Yaakov tells them, listen, guys, the secret's out. I'm telling you now that there's a Gilgul, whatever the secret is, whatever we understand about the Gilgul, whatever it is. Boys, calm down. There's a bigger picture that we don't understand. Take a step back, right? So you could say is if you didn't look at it that way, if you just look from a purely practical sense, and we apply the honor killing approach, right? We could say is okay, then the honor killing makes sense, right? We could say that, right? But once they know the secret, they should have been like, okay, they should have held back. They should have done something. Maybe they could have, broken a glass, or they could have thrown something against the wall, right? But they shouldn't have done what they did, like you said. But they shouldn't have done that. Once they know the secret, and once Yaakov tells them the secret, that's it, right? That's almost okay. So he says here, but if right? So we have to say is we have to look at the question even bigger, because what happens? We go back to the story of Yaakov and Esav, and with Yitzchak. What happened to Yitzchak? Yitzchak, we said is that
Yitzchak's love was blessing Esav, but
right.
his words were blessing Yaakov.
Right, exactly. So he's saying is we have to understand is what in our heart what counts, or in our mouth what we actually do, which one counts?
Yeah, but here it's Shimon and Levi's heart. There it's Yitzchak.
Okay.
And he's not the one that's supposed to be cursed. Yaakov is the one supposed to be cursed. So why is he comparing the two?
No, so don't ask the question again. I'm sorry. Ask it again.
Is that a good question?
No, you're right.
He's saying
because Yitzchak, because what happened with Yitzchak, right? If you think about the question again, if you think about what Yitzchak did, Yitzchak said he sees Esav in front of him, right? We don't know that. Again, he didn't know that. He says Akol Kol Yaakov V'Yadayim Yedei Esav, right? So he's not sure. So he says, listen, my mouth is saying one thing, my heart is saying this. What's his heart saying? Esav, right? And his brain, his mouth is thinking maybe Yaakov, maybe Esav, but in his heart is thinking this is Esav, this is the Bechor, right? And then what happens when he finds out that it's Yaakov, actually Yaakov? He says, Gam Baruch Yeh. So he says is that his heart and his mind they're not aligned.
Okay.
So the question is, the question is now it goes back to Shimon and Levi. But did Shimon and Levi say their heart was in the right place?
Yeah, but Yaakov was supposed to be cursed at that time. And they're comparing the heart and the mouth of Yitzchak to Yaakov supposed to be cursed. To here Shimon and Levi are supposed to be cursed from their action. So I'm saying it's not a good comparison to compare. Shimon and Levi are being cursed by Yaakov Avinu. Aru Arpam, right?
No, but no, they're not being cursed. That's what I'm saying.
They're being cursed by their anger.
Their anger is being cursed,
Right,
not them.
Right, not them. But here he's bringing back the Yitzchak Avinu. But Yitzchak Avinu wasn't the one who was going to be cursed anyways with his heart and mouth. Talking about Yaakov Avinu.
Right, no, Yitzchak wasn't cursing. Yitzchak was giving a bracha to Yaakov.
But it's going back on Rashi that said Yaakov Avinu should have been cursed then, right?
But Rashi says here, "Sheizkir Avim et avonam ba'apam hargu ish lo kilel ela ba'apam." He didn't curse. He cursed only their anger. He should have been cursed, right? He should have been. But what happens? But he said also you too.
You're not understanding my point.
Maybe I don't understand.
Listen a second.
Someone asked, is that the situation about finding a young maiden and not betrothed? Pay the father 50 shekels, marry her, and can't divorce her. Is this with or without her consent?
Shimon and Levi.
The answer to that question is that according to the Torah, right? It's with her. After, unfortunately, when things happen without her consent, you can go back to the father and say, "I pay a fine," but you have to marry her. That's what happened with Shem. We don't learn that from there, but we make a comparison with that. Now, yes.
I'm saying it's hard to
no, it's fine.
I'm saying the ones that maybe are supposed to be cursed for their anger, Shimon and Levi, right? And it's depending on, now he's saying, do we go by their action or by their heart? Because they knew the truth,
Right.
but their action was that, right?
Right.
Now with Yaakov Avinu, it's different. Why? Because there it's Yitzchak Avinu. He's not the one that's supposed to be cursed. So why are you telling me about his heart or his mouth?
No, but
You have to give me a mashal of Yaakov Avinu's heart and mouth, not Yitzchak Avinu.
so he's saying.
You heard the question or no?
Yeah, I got the
That's
question.
it.
So he's saying the question is. So your question is right. So the question, the really what he's saying is, he's not making that Yaakov Avinu and Yaakov Avinu. We're not saying Yaakov here and Yaakov, the situation in Yaakov. Yitzchak, what was Yitzchak's intention at the time when he cursed Yaakov or he blessed Yaakov?
To bless Esau.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're saying that intention, right? My mind and my mouth have to say the same thing. That's the situation with Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esau. And then the situation with Shimon and Levi was that their intention, maybe, could you say, quote unquote, justifies their action. Their intention was, we know the secret, but
we're still going to kill them.
we're going to still do it anyways because we know we're thinking generations later, they're going to be like, secret nothing. I don't care about the secret.
So just like by Yitzchak,
Exactly.
and then he said,
Maybe I wasn't clear. Right.
even though, so now we want to say maybe Shimon Levi also it's good what they did.
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly. That's
Go
what.
ahead.
I'm sorry if
Go
I
ahead.
wasn't clear.
Go
Okay, so it says, "Omnam mashanu roim sheYaakov ba'al azkir avonam, kmo she'amar, b'sodam al tovo ki ba'apam argui shma mina sheyesh lam avon." They did make a mistake, right? Yaakov Avinu says they made a mistake. There's no question. He reminds them of their mistake. Okay, now just remember that. V'lama yesh lam avon l'fi shalchu achar dvarim shanirim la'ayin v'adra b'haya lem lilech achar dvarim hamsurim la'lev. So he says is according to their what they saw is someone defiled their sister. So if someone defiled your sister, in my eyes, I'm thinking, okay, practically, I got to do something. But in their heart, they're thinking, wait a minute, Dad told us something else, right? We all know situations where I know my parent or I know someone told me not to do something in my heart, but my actions speak differently. So he's saying is, this is what Yaakov is telling them. Yaakov said is, what does Yaakov tell them in there? Yaakov says to them, I'm going to read the pasuk in English just so we get, it says here. It says here, Shimon and Levi are comrades, right? They work together. Their weapon is a stonecraft. Into their conspiracy may my soul not enter. With their congregation do not join, right? Oh, my honor, for their rage, they murdered people and, right? Accursed is their rage, for it is intense, right? And their wrath is harsh. I will separate with it. Okay. So he says is that their mind, their eyes saw something that was not appropriate. So their eyes said, we got to do something. Their heart saying his dad told us something, and we know the secret. So maybe they were right. Maybe we could say that they just sort of kilu justified. But Yaakov saying, no, they made an avon. They sinned. I tell you a secret. I tell you the secret of what's going on here. Tell you the bigger secret of what's going on in the world. Once I tell you that secret, you guys can't take it out of it and say, okay, I'm going to make a practical step about that anymore. So he says here, V'zeu shekatav Rashi, kshe'izkir avihem et avunam, v'im kol ze lo nitkala el apam. V'Yaakov adraba, im hayinu olchim achar advarim hamashrim lalev, Yaakov lo haya ra'u l'klal livracha, like you said, right? So he says here, that's why Rashi mentions, he says is avihem et avunam, he cursed their anger. He didn't curse them, right? He cursed their anger. And he says, and they're lo nitkala el ba'apam, he didn't curse their anger, he cursed only their anger. And Yaakov even more so, if we would go after the things that were there in their heart, Yaakov
Yitzchak thought he's blessing Esau in his heart.
Exactly.
Shani kavanat Yitzchak lo hayta ela al Esau.
That's right. When you're the guy who finds out you just got, pardon me, screwed, you got tricked, the first thing you're going to do be like, I'm gonna kill you, right? Right? That's what Yitzchak should have done. What? The first thing you should have done when he found out the doors jammed. What was the first thing that you would think that Yitzchak would do? There should have been like a weird pause, right?
Whoa.
Oh, so he says that the first thing he should have done is he cursed him, but he didn't curse him. And that's why Rashi goes back and says, so now you have two stories. Oh, nice. Now you made my whole night. Thank you so much. Anyway, that's the fish. You have to eat. You got to eat it. After this.
Oh, he makes it?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so we'll go back and we'll go back and review just to the end. Yeah. Hashem makes it right. Anyway, so we'll go back in a second. So we go back to the Torah Dalet. So Torah Dalet starts with, it says in the story in the brachot of Bilam says Ma'akov lo kava el Lo kaba'el, uma'azom lo azam Adonai. So he says, what should I curse if it hasn't been cursed yet? How can I curse something? Oh, let's see here. That might be up there. Might be up there on the left side there. On your right side, excuse me. Yeah.
Further down.
No, that's it. Okay. Is that right? No, that might be. That's not. That's too thin. That's not. No, that's not.
All right, go more to the right.
More to the right there. All the way to the next shelf.
Yeah. See the midbar there?
Yeah. So Torah Dalet. So Torah Dalet starts with the bracha of Bilam, and Bilam says, "How can I curse something that's not cursed?" And he quotes. The Zera Shimshon quotes Rashi, and Rashi.
God didn't curse it.
Right. So how can I curse something that God? Right. Okay, how can I curse something that God didn't curse? And then Rashi says there, because they never get cursed on even a place where it should have been cursed. That's what Rashi says. Look at what it says. He says here, right? When it should have been cursed, they didn't curse anything.
Someone said, I think he knew his son deserved death and is trying to buy his life.
What?
Is that in reference where we are?
What's that?
I think he knew his son deserved death and
Who's
tried
son?
to buy his life.
Who's that?
Someone.
I don't understand. Maybe I'll ask him to clarify the question. But anyway, so the point here, so it says here, Rashi says that even when the times that they should have been cursed, that is Bnei Israel, should have been cursed, they didn't curse, right?
With Yaakov Avinu
and with
and
Yitzchak.
Shimon Levi.
Right. Yitzchak, right. What happened? So that the two stories Rashi brings two stories. First, he brings the story of Shimon and Levi, and then he brings the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav. So the first question that Zera Shimshon asks is, what's going on here? Yeah, Rashi knew the storyline. It's not hard to know that Yitzchak comes before Yaakov and Esav. Yitzchak comes before Yaakov and the Shvatim. So he goes back and he says, the answer is because the proof was not strong enough with Yitzchak, because what happened with Yitzchak and Esav and Yaakov, the story, it's not a good, strong enough proof, because what? Because Yitzchak had in mind to give the bracha to Esav. He finds out later that what he was saying, he was talking to Yaakov, but in his heart he was talking to Esav. So his brain and mind and his intention and his mind and his mouth were two different things. And then at the end he says, Gam Baruch Yeh. So he's like, okay, then a bracha too. But the Shimon and Levi story.
Well, why was Yaakov supposed to be cursed over there?
Because he was so angry.
He's cheating.
He was cheating, right? Yitzchak could have easily said, like I think every time I hear that story, I think of Homer Simpson when he's like, when he's like, you know what I mean? Like
almost every episode.
Right, exactly. But I'm saying, like, exactly. It's like you're like, what would you, as a father, what would you do? The first thing you would be like, I can't believe you did, So that's what I think every time I hear that story. And I'm not saying that just now. I'm like thinking all the time. But so what is the lesson? So we have that, what Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esav. But then the story with Shimon and Levi, even there they should have been cursed too, right? Because what happened?
There Yaakov Avinu Mamash cursed him.
Right, Yaakov Avinu Mamash cursed him later on, but he didn't curse them. He cursed their anger. So when I was reviewing the shiur, I skipped the part. I skipped the part of the Arizal. The Arizal talks about there. You can look in the Zera Shimshon mentions it. The Zera Shimshon mentions the Arizal saying that Terach, that is Avram's father, and his wife had relations when she was a nidah. Now, I don't know how he gets to that, but let's accept the fact that I already knew what he was talking about. And right, so she had to do a tikkun. The mother had to do a tikkun, and the father had to tikkun. So Terach became a gilgul. Eov was a gilgul of Terach. Okay, it's not the first time that Riyah Kadosh mentioned it. It's mentioned right? Right, exactly. So you look at Eov, you see how much tikkun Eov had to go through, and then the dinah. He says that dinah is the odiot of nidah. Mm-hmm. So he says that's the dinah. What Shem did to dinah, that was the tikkun. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was the tikkun.
Interesting though, it doesn't say Avram. Avram seems fine.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what another question is. Right? Avram is like the son of this unit of this thing that happened. Yeah. You're just like, how did Avram come out of the thing? So
because once his name was changed, he became a completely new.
Right. So that's probably
right. Once from Moshe Feinstein Paskin that with these kind of things that there's a limit stress that maybe one time she went into the yam.
Right.
Or there's tikkunim that.
Yeah, but we never say Avram ben Terach.
Right.
Have you ever heard such an expression?
Right. Exactly. So
we mention it on the. You mention it Lel Haggadah. We mention it on Lel Seder.
Terach Avi Abraham. Right. Terach Avi Abraham. We do mention there. Right?
In the Haggadah.
Fine, but
in general thing. So anyway, so he says that. So he says the tikkun was that. So then Yaakov knew the sod. Yaakov knew that's what was going on. So when the story of Dinah happens, he sits in the tent, he's waiting there, and he knew what was going on, and he doesn't do anything. The boys come in and he repeats the whole story to them. And he's trying to tell them, listen, the bigger picture is there's a bigger picture, and I want to tell you the whole secret. And all of a sudden, they're like, we can't hold the secret. Secret anything. I don't care. Dad, you told me a secret. That secret's important, but I got to do something. We have to take action. Because if we don't take action, the later generations are not going to remember that secret. So their anger is so bad that their mind. So you could say maybe there's a justification for what they did, right? You could say that, but Yaakov says no. I told you the secret. That once I tell you that secret, once I tell you what's going on in the bigger picture of the world, that's it. You gotta.
Therefore, you're not going with your heart.
Right. And therefore, what happens? Therefore, that's why Rashi starts with Shimon V'Levi, because that proof is a stronger proof of your mind and your heart, your mouth and your mouth and your mind have to be in line, right? You have to. That's a better proof than the story of Yitzchak and Yaakov and Esau. It's a better proof. And that's why Rashi went out of his way to go out of order right now. So why is it a better proof? Because Shimon V'Levi knew the secret. Once you know the secret.
Yitzchak didn't know.
Right, Yitzchak didn't know. Exactly. Once they knew the secret, and they still.
If Yitzchak knew, then it's Yaakov. He still blessed him.
That's something else. But here, they knew the secret. Once you know the secret, you can't say, all right, I'm ignoring it. Then they knew for a fact that that's a point where they should have been cursed. Right? But what's the lesson? Why do I say this is one of the most powerful lessons of teaching kids? In general, not only kids, but in general, is when you tell a kid, you're bad. Right? When you say what? Unfortunately, a lot of times we say you're bad, you're a mistake. You did something right. But what did Yaakov do? Yaakov said your anger. He cursed their anger. He didn't curse them, because he said to them, "Listen, I understand. We got angry. We get angry at that situation, right? So we never say you're bad. You're supposed to say what you did was not right."
From here we learn it.
Right? Think about what he said. Now Moshe Rabbeinu is a different story. Moshe, like you said, Moshe never mentions Shimon. They never gives a bracha to Shimon because he was so held up.
Oh, also because of Zimri with Zimri.
Right, Zimri and the whole situation. But I'm saying is, so there's like a chain of events. But the point is, like, when I saw this, I was just like, wow, what a great lesson for parenting. Like, you have to be careful what we say to our kids, because the kids hear, I'm bad. So when I say, I'm bad, so once I'm bad, then I might as well keep on being bad. But if you say, no, your action is bad, what can I do then? I can say, I can fix my action.
Nice.
Right? It's a Gavaldic teaching, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'Amen.
Woo!
That's the first one. So this is the next part of Rashi there is a little...
Finished. You didn't get.
How's it answer Parshat Balak?
Because he says, Balak says, what does Balak say there? Bilam says that ma'ikov lo ekov el. I can't read. So I stopped there because the lesson is good without that piece there.
Okay.
The lesson is strong there. Yeah.
You can't take until you take.
So I'm going to take in a second. So once we pause the YouTube. So anyway, so the point is, how does this connect? Because Bilam Rasha said, ma'ikov, I can't curse something that God didn't curse, and Rashi says, they didn't curse even in the points when they should have been cursed.
Wow. So that connects.
That's the connection. The connection is that Bnei Israel are protected, right? At the 2 points that these 2 massive stories where you're like, that's the moment when someone should have been like, they should have gotten cursed. They didn't get cursed. So how am I, Bilam, Rasha, how am I going to curse, right? God should have gotten, there are so many times in history when we should have gotten cursed, right? The next Torah, then the next lesson is also something similar to that about this. Later on, we'll talk about it in a second. Also, another kind of similar idea. But the point is that the concept here is that Bilam was saying is, I can't curse something that God doesn't curse. And when Rashi mentions that even at the moments when they should have been cursed, and he brings these 2 proofs.
Amazing Rashi brings that, huh?
Yeah, I was fascinated when I was just like, we look at Rashi, and you look at Rashi and all these things all the time. You're just like, wow, it's just an enlightening thing. Like, I never thought, why would I, like, when you read the Rashi, you don't think like, oh, the order is wrong. Like, you don't think about it. You're just like, okay, Rashi's got his thing, right? The Zera Shimshon asks a great question. It's a simple question of like, why do you mess up? Why do you do the order wrong? Right? The chronological order should have been the way it should have been. But he asked a great question, and he even brings a great story. I mean, a great answer as that what should going on. Shkoach.
Wow. Square.
All right, where's the crackers? Is it go live or do it turn to pause?
Yeah, we'll pause.
Okay, good. So I don't want to like start talking. I'm like, where are the crackers? Studying on camera.
Hey, you asked Charles if I could take for my 2 boys one of these?
Charles, can you take 2 home?
Well, this is Charles's keeper.
Hey, Charles.
Yeah,
It's the Charles keeper. It's the Charles keeper.
Charles, where's Charles?
He's somewhere there. I've got crumbs on this one. Yes.
Do you have a cracker? Oh, there you go.
You wrote yes, low.
Yes.
Charles, where are you?
Baruch atah Adonai, Melech haolam.